We're having a problem getting the room because it's locked.
Hours of body camera footage shedding light on the deadliest school shooting in Texas history.
Everything that happened in Uvalde was a complete failure.
The harrowing 911 calls.
Okay, Mom, I do have units already pulling up.
From inside and outside the classrooms.
I think he's shooting kids.
Thousands and thousands of documents. For more than 2 years, we've been fighting to get these records for you and for the families of the victims.
Why are we finding this out late? Why isn't something being done? And why are these officers still employed?
Tonight, we're here for you with new answers. Good evening and thanks for joining us for News 4 San Antonio at 5. I'm Darian Trotter. For years now, we've been fighting to get access to those records, but we're blocked at every turn. That's why our parent company, Sinclair Broadcasting, along with several other news outlets nationwide, filed a lawsuit against the city of Uvalde. You deserve to know what happened that day. The families of the 21 victims deserve to know what happened. And now, because of that lawsuit, we've got more answers. A judge ruled in our favor, forcing the city to release what they've been fighting to cover up for 2 years. We have team coverage today from Uvalde from all angles, including voices of the victims' families and survivors. We begin with News 4 San Antonio's Amanda Henderson live in Uvalde, where she spoke with a family member who's watched some of that now public body camera video. Amanda.
You know, Darian, they did watch it, and you can imagine the emotional strength that it takes for anyone to watch it, especially these families, and to really just sit down and try to process every single bit of it. And we're going to get to a little later in the show why they're frustrated about this video being released. And it doesn't have anything to do with the transparency. It has everything to do with the city's timing on it. So that's going to come up a little bit later. But speaking with Berlinda Arreola, she is the step-grandmother of Amerie Jo Garza, one of the 19 children and 2 teachers killed at Robb Elementary that awful day in May 2022. She says it was important for her to go through all this footage because she wants to see exactly where the breakdown in communication was for the officers to confront the gunmen. Remember, it took them more than an hour to go inside and confront the gunmen inside classroom 111 and 112, which is where so much of that devastation took place. Berlinda says the videos being released comes at a time where the families have been dealing with a lot. 2 of the officers who responded during the mass shooting, Pete Arredondo and Adrian Gonzalez, were criminally charged for their roles in the response to confront the gunmen, which again, as I mentioned, took more than an hour. Both men pleading not guilty to their charges. A couple weeks ago, we were here at the courthouse. Berlinda saying that she has questions, though, why the families of victims and survivors were not given a chance to see the video if they wanted to before it became public.
A lot of the families just aren't ready for this. It just continues to be blow after blow after blow. Why not give it to us first so we can process it, so we can understand it?
Yeah, Berlinda is one of several family members I spoke to about this very topic. And again, like I mentioned, while they want transparency, there is the question of why it wasn't even offered to them ahead of it becoming public. You can imagine it opens old wounds. It really just opens that emotion. I'm here with News 4 San Antonio's Matt Roy. Matt, I know you spoke with people who share that exact same sentiment.
Exactly, and it's been a huge problem, as you well know, over the last 2 years. Information coming out sporadically and not really all at once, making the families like Berlinda have to relive this tragic day over and over and over again. But this all comes down to the families have been seeking, what they've been seeking, is accountability. It took 2 years in a lawsuit from several media outlets, as Darian told you, to get this information, yet the Texas Department of Public Safety hasn't released their information. I spoke to State Senator Roland Gutierrez today. He says the states continue to drop the ball by not releasing the body cam and documents from that day.
State of Texas and their lack of transparency here is abysmal and horrible and tragic and atrocious. We are supposed to live in a country and in a state where we have accountability, and yet we have nothing.
He says the fact that just 2 officers have been indicted of the more than 350 that were there that day is absolutely shameful. Now, there is some damning information in those documents, in those recordings. He's hoping that the district attorney here in Uvalde, whose office is in the building just down the street from us right now, will use some of that information and bring these law enforcement officers to justice. Darian?
Hey, before I let you guys go, you guys have spent a lot of time over the past 2 years in Uvalde. What do those families there think about the timing, the release of these documents 2 years later?
No, they're not huge fans of it because school starts tomorrow. I know you spoke to Noah's family. So
yes,
what did they say?
Noah Rona, who, as many of our viewers know, he is a survivor of Classroom 112. He, you can't even begin to imagine,
right.
Matt, Darian, our viewers, what these children and teachers went through in that 77 minutes of horror. But the frustration from the families is the timing of knowing that they had a little bit longer, the city had a little bit longer of a window to release these documents. I know the city saying they wanted to make sure they got them out for transparency because they were in compliance. But again, school starts tomorrow, and that's very, very, they already have a lot of anxiety about school starting tomorrow, and this kind of just added to it.
Once again, just not what the families want.
All right, and real quick, before you guys go, what's been the most impactful or damning piece of video as it relates to the family's opinion?
You can't get those 911 calls out of your head.
No, I listened to all of them yesterday.
Yeah.
It's hard to listen to. The Mariano Pargas thing, I think, was impactful to both of us. We knew that the acting UPD chief that day, Mariano Pargas, knew that there was 8 to 9 people alive for over 30 minutes in that room and still didn't go in, still waited another 35 minutes to go into that room. But when you hear it, it just makes everything a little bit more real once again.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can imagine for these families, it's just another blow. We'll have much more tonight on News 4 San Antonio at 10. Darian?
Matt and Amanda, thank you for your live coverage in Uvalde. One of the biggest headlines to come out of this document release was a 911 call from a man who claimed to be the shooter's uncle. Take a listen.
Uvalde County number 1.
Ma'am, the son that's happening at Rob's, he's my nephew, man. He's the shooter. Maybe he could listen to me because he does listen to me. Everything I tell him, he does listen to me.
You can hear how frantic Armando Ramos was. Ramos made the call at 12:57 p.m. the day of the massacre, just moments after officers breached the door of the classroom and killed the gunman. At that time, no one knew the magnitude of what happened to the students and teachers inside the classrooms and what some call the waiting game happening outside the doors. The call lasted just more than 6 minutes before the dispatcher tells Ramos an officer will be in touch. During the tragedy and days after, police officers were in constant communication with other agencies and city officials. We now have access to thousands of those text messages. News 4's I-Team's Jordan Elder went through each one and joins us with what she found out.
Text messages are some of the most personal things we keep on our phones. You vent, you joke, you plan. And that's what Uvalde police officers were doing as the shooting unfolded and in the days after. As word of the shooting first started to spread, Uvalde Police Chief Daniel Rodriguez's phone started chiming. He was out of town when this shooting happened. At 11:38 a.m., Texas DPS Captain Joel Betancourt starts a group chat with Rodriguez and Uvalde County Sheriff Ruben Nolasco. Quote, "Reports of a school shooting in Uvalde. Are they valid?" "Yes," the sheriff responds. He tells Betancourt that he's at another scene with a woman shot in the head. We now know that was the shooter's grandmother. "On our way," Betancourt says. Nolasco later tells him about the shooter, quote, "barricaded at the school." Several reports have highlighted that miscommunication as one of the key failures in this police response. Over and over, officers treated this like a barricaded subject and not an active shooter situation. They react to that criticism in the messages too, especially after this press conference with DPS Director Stephen McCraw.
Of course it was not the right decision. It was the wrong decision, period. There was no excuse for that.
Days after the tragedy, a lieutenant tells the chief he got a call from Senator John Cornyn. Quote, "He said the DPS director should not have done that and that they are working on it. I told him that the DPS director screwed us all and that now we're all getting death threats." They talk about concerns going out in public and to the grocery store. And take a look at this. These are the automated messages coming in from the Uvalde Police Department's tip line. We've blocked out some of the language, but this went on for days. Chief Rodriguez resigned in March of this year. Mariano Pargas was the acting chief on the day of the shooting, but his text messages were not included in the trove of documents we received. For the News 4 I-Team, I'm Jordan Elder.
All right, Jordan, thanks. The city of Uvalde also released this statement along with the documents. Quote, "In the interest of serving taxpayers, the Uvalde community, and ensuring compliance with TPIA, the city is fulfilling its responsibility to provide responsive records. which have been appropriately redacted in accordance with Texas law pursuant to the court's order to conclude this lawsuit. This is the largest release of information we've seen in the last 2 years. We've obtained more than 3 hours of body camera footage inside the class, nearly 2 hours of dash cam footage, and 19 911 calls from bystanders, witnesses, even children inside the classroom. But the effort to get all of this, well, it hasn't been easy.
What it means is, thank God we got the press. Thank God we have people who are doing their jobs.
Accurately reporting on this tragedy has been difficult, to say the least, for members of the media. From the beginning, our efforts to get documents were blocked by the state of Texas. And then in August of 2022, News 4 San Antonio and our sister station, Fox SA, joined more than 12 media agencies in a lawsuit after the state and its agencies ignored the Texas Open Records law. Investigative reporter Yami Birhin from our sister station, Fox SA, talked to attorneys who say this is a win for the victims and the families of Robb Elementary School, also for Texas taxpayers who deserve to know the facts.
This wasn't a fight to be first. It was a fight to know what went wrong, a fight for accountability, a fight for advocacy for the families in Uvalde, and also one to learn from those mistakes, as Laura Prather, who represented the media, tells us tonight. Our journalists, since the tragic incident, filed in 2 years hundreds of open records requests. Most fell on deaf ears, many still unanswered from local, state, and county agencies. We kept hitting a wall when it came to obtaining records.
It is hugely important for the public to know what happened that day and to be able to learn from those mistakes.
Laura Prather is a well-known First Amendment lawyer based in Austin who specializes in media law and government transparency. She's our attorney in the lawsuit to obtain the records.
It is hugely important for the public to know what happened that day and to be able to learn from those mistakes.
Prather admits she now feels she was pretty naive, thinking people, the government, would do the right thing and, quote, fess up to the mistakes made by law enforcement and learn from it. She now says she was wrong.
Well, now what we've learned is there is 2.8 terabytes of data that DPS holds that is being withheld from the public. That is just an unfathomable amount of information.
For local attorneys who battle every day to obtain records from governmental agencies to represent people in every Texas community, this is a win for all.
I mean, it's a battle we fight almost on a weekly basis with SAPD, with the city, with other documents. What people don't understand and what really is infuriating, those aren't police documents, those aren't law enforcement documents, those aren't district attorney documents. Those are our documents. Those are our papers. We are the ones should be entitled to them.
Tim Maloney represented families in the Sutherland Springs shooting and officer-involved shootings across Texas.
What it means is, thank God we got the press. Thank God we have people who are doing their jobs. Thank God that we had a unified front instead of competition for these documents. The idea that there are people who gather together and clearly for journalistic reasons, but also I think for reasons that are even more important, and that is providing those families with the long overdue answers they deserve.
And this battle is not over. At 10 o'clock, we'll tell you what's next. And one day before school starts in many school districts across Texas, Prather tells us what it means for the children of the state. Yami Virgen, News 4 San Antonio.
All right, thanks a lot, Yami. These documents provided a lot of context for what unfolded, but we're still working to get answers to several questions about the police response. We've obtained body camera video from 5 officers, but the files show about a dozen officers were wearing cameras that day. It is unclear where the rest of that footage is. We also know there are more documents like this at the county and state level that could provide an even better look at decision-making the day of the shooting. And once again, you can find coverage on the release of the Uvalde documents. It is the top story on our website right now. We'll follow and fight for those records just like we did today.